I am Groundeffected. This is your mom, and welcome to the bottom of the jelly bean jar. I've been asked by my Patreons over on the Discord if I could show them a couple of tricks about dry brushing. I wish I could have dedicated much more time to this video and specifically go over complete dry brushing so that I can help you guys. Unfortunately, time is a bit of a cruncher at the moment. That makes no sense. I don't know what the words I'm saying. Let me just paint this base and I'll show you a couple of little tricks that I use for dry brushing my bases. But you can also dry brush other things, not only bases, but let's just pretend that for this video, dry brushing is for bases. Oh, don't forget, if you are going to watch a video, you might as well like it, because I can guarantee if you don't find any information in this video that will help you, it's as easy as just taking away the like at the end of the video. If you haven't subscribed already, which YouTube tells me more than 50% of you have not, then you might as well just click the subscribe, because we all know that for every time you click that subscribe button, I will get one more new subscriber. And now let's just get straight into the video. In order to show off a bit of dry brushing, the best thing I can do is start to paint something that would effectively show what dry brushing does. And rocks could probably be one of the best subject matters for showing off dry brushing. To be fair, I probably could have chosen a little bit more of an exciting rock to paint for this specific video, but like I said, I really do wish I could have spent a bit more time on this video. However, with life constraints and everything going on, I pretty much am resigned to just squeezing this one in, and this one is specifically for the Patreons. Basically what I'm going to do, it's been done before in a video that I've shown you on how I paint rocks, and essentially I'm going to splatter a load of color, starting off with black, a bit of gray to bring in some color into this. The black is just more like a medium to smoosh the colors around. I'm going to use yellow over the top of that as well, and that's going to help to create an off kind of grayish yellow highlight to the rocks. This will just bring some saturation into the color. Because I'm doing a black rock, or basically a dark grayish black rock, I don't really want it to be just black, because that's really boring to look at. Now for dry brushing, you're going to need a couple of essential tools. You don't have to use brushes like this, but I like to use a large makeup brush and a smaller makeup brush and a paper towel. Make sure before you start to put paint on your brush, wet the dang brush. I know it says dry brushing in the title, but that doesn't mean you should use a dry brush. Using a dry brush will result in a much chalkier effect. Wet your brush, but damn well make sure you clean all that water out of it. You don't want the brush to be wet, you want to make sure it's damp. I then take the colors that I'm going to use for my highlight, and I will wipe off as much of that paint as possible. I test it on my thumb so that I can see that there is not any streaks. If you wipe it against your thumb and you get any streaky lines, do not put it against your model, because you're going to have a bad time. So basically use your thumb as a good place to find out if you've got streaks or too much paint in your brush. I like to use the large dry brush because in a big piece like this, it's going to save me a bit of time, but also the bigger the brush, the softer the effect. If you want it to look almost like it's airbrushed and a little bit softer on the edges, then use a bigger brush. If you want it to be more crisp and precise and pinpointed in specific locations, then use a smaller brush. The smaller brush will catch the edges a little bit better than the larger brush, whereas the larger brush is going to bend a bit more and kind of go inside of the creases and a little bit inside of the grooves a bit, perhaps too much for your liking. It completely depends on the look that you're going for. I would 100% suggest testing different brushes. Even a normal paintbrush will do a good job at dry brushing. On this base, I need to add a bit of life to it. There is some glowing mushrooms that are placed around the base, and in order to set up for this, I'm going to start painting some of the moss that's around those mushrooms, and I'm going to start off with the dark green. This is going to set me up for later on. I want to make sure that I have the green color in place before I start to add the accent colors to the rock. For accent colors, I'm going to use blue. Like I said, there are some glowing mushrooms on the base, and those glowing mushrooms are kind of glowing blue. So I'm going to use blue as my shadow color, and I'm going to spray that into some of the deeper recesses, specifically around the feet. I know it seems weird, but if you put a darker or a cooler tone near the feet, it's going to make it look like there's a shadow underneath your character. You can make it look more like a shadow. In my case, I just added a bit of a tone so that we have a blue, and I added those shadows underneath the character. This is just going to create a bit more visual interest later on. In order to continue with the moss, I'm going to use a slightly bluish green This is also to tie in with the fact that the mushrooms on top are glowing blue, so I'm going to use this bluish green as another base tone. I'm probably going to get rid of most of this color, but it will still be in there. You may not see it, but your eye will pick it up. I'm going to then go with a lighter green over the top of that. It's not too yellowy, but it's definitely a green that is on the yellower side of greens, and I'm going to put this just into the highlight edges of things. I kind of dry brush this in just to create a little bit of texture, and I also use stippling as well. I then use a green wash and I splatter that all over the mossy patches. This is going to ruin any cool effects that I've done. If I did any really awesome painting, this is just going to fill the holes and make it look like poo, but it doesn't matter because that is just a base coat. Once it's dried, I'm going to come in and I'm going to dry brush more of the lighter green. I'm going to mix a bit of yellows into that, and I'm just going to slowly bring up the edges. As you can see with the dry brush, it does give you a kind of airbrushed look. It's not fully airbrushed because it's a little bit grittier and grainier than an airbrush, but it will give you that kind of effect. I then take my airbrush and I use this blue technical paint that I used once in a video for making a bronze statue, and I felt like this would be a good base for the object source lighting coming from these mushrooms. On top of that, once it had dried, I used a bit of white acrylic ink mixed in with the blue just to add a bit more highlight, so that when I came back with this Psychic Shock blue from Army Painter, it will then make a little bit more of a saturated blue just because there is white underneath and not another color. For the little mushrooms that are peppered all over the base, I'm going to paint bottom of mushroom color onto the bottoms of the mushrooms. I'm also going to use that Psychic Shock to just shade the bottom parts of them. This is just to tie them into the base so that they look like they fit in and the light is emitting all around them. For the tops of the mushrooms, I'm going to use Flesh Tearers Red, and I'm literally just going to paint this in one solid coat over the tops. Now, because I had painted with the airbrush the undersides, this creates a bit of a darker piece in the middle and a slightly lighter edge to the mushroom. But don't worry about that, I'm going to use a brighter red from Ammo by Mig, and I'm going to spray this over the top of the mushrooms. Just from the top really, I just want to create a bit of a gradient, nothing too crazy. These are, after all, part of the base. They don't need to take your eye away from the main character. For the little dots on them, I mixed Psychic Shock into a bit of white and I painted those dots solid and added a tiny little white highlight on them. Now, I definitely squeezed a little bit of a video in a very busy schedule, but I have always said I will try to upload twice a week, and I will try to stick to that for as long as I possibly can. And it is because of the Patreons that helps me be able to do this, because without their help, I couldn't keep these lights blind in my eyeballs. And speaking of the Patreons, I would like to thank the new Patreon we got this week, Juan C. Caro. Thank you, my dude, for blinding my eyeballs. Like I said in a previous video, some crazy stuff has happened in my life recently. A lot of good things are about to happen. I'm just not really sure when I'm able to release any news yet, so just stick with me. If the videos seem erratic, I'm so sorry about that. If you think there's something I can improve on, make sure to leave that in the comment section below. There is a little box that YouTube gives you for you to leave words, like suggestions and things. Of course, I will do my best to make sure that the uploads stay twice a week, and if there is anything you didn't like in the video, the best thing I can tell you, my bruh, is just click the dislike button, and then please f off. Now I've got to try edit this thing before it's too late to go to bed and wake up and tattoo someone permanently for the rest of their life tomorrow. Yay!